Today we'll talk about astrology. Well, I really love astrology. But as I usually say, there is work and there is a hobby. Astrology is not a hobby for me. My hobbies are ancient cultures, ancient religions, archaeology and history. But I don't earn money on that, and I do it in secret for my clients. Astrology is a work for me. Astrology is a profession for me and a lifestyle. So I'll start a little about my hobbies. What ancient civilizations do you know? Well, everyone knows ancient Egypt. What else? Sumerians. Do all know Sumerians? Mesopotamia, you also know Maya. What else? Druids are the Middle Ages, and they originated from the Egyptian tradition. We have little information about that, but everything we mentioned, at least I know definitely that India, Egypt and Maya are the heirs of the knowledge of Atlantis. There's a lot of evidence that in our culture, almost everything is based on Egyptian values. Someday I will tell more about it. And today we also discussed with Victoria that I also want to make a lecture on Christianity. One more lecture with a different name. And I'll show you all Christian icons and their ancient prototypes, which date back about 5,000 years BC. And I'll tell how it all was developing and how ancient knowledge is now presented in a completely different, more modern form. I'll start from far away. So everything you just mentioned. I'll talk all about things I know, and I will be telling at once what I don't know. I plan to continue researching these topics, so as soon as I find out anything new, I'll be sharing the information with you. Besides, archaeology and history don't stand still. Can you imagine now the mummies are being investigated at MRT? You don't need to take them out of their cover. They are sent there right in their cover of clay and flax. And they take the cells for analysis, studying the genotypes. So everything is developing now, unlike our system of education. And in the place we've been to recently, near Giza, near Memphis, and in Thebes, they continue excavations. They're studying the pyramids, they're researching, they're renovating the temples. And in 2002, a substance was invented, a preservative for papyrus, which allows you to read those papyrus that hadn't been touched previously, so that they wouldn't scatter. And in Xi'an I kept asking, why did they reveal only a small part of terracotta warriors? And all the others were mothballed in the ground. It turned out, when you dig them out, the paint on the warriors starts disappearing in a day or two. Previously, they weren't just made of clay. They were all painted over clay, same as Egyptian frescoes were painted. It turns out that in 1100 or 900 years AD, they covered with a kind of paint that deteriorates. And in Egypt, the paint on the tombs, which were 4,700 years old, doesn't deteriorate. Can you imagine what an amazing civilization it was? So what impressed me was that Egyptian astronomy is awesome. Already in the years 2700–2900 BC, it was said that Nut was watching the earth and she saw it as a round leather ball. So they, Egyptians, knew that the earth was round. Maya knew the earth was round. Therefore, the astronomy existed in Egypt. But there were found no traces of astrology. There are calendar systems built with some purpose, usually for ordinary life. There were calendar divination systems in order to find out something we don't know. So, some divination systems. For example, Jyotish is a calendar system which is being constantly updated. If you were in India, we often go there. I take groups to India every half a year. There are ancient structures, well, rather medieval, like Jantar Mantar in Delhi and in Jaipur. They are reconstructed and supported by UNESCO, but these are still medieval buildings. There are more ancient ones. In ancient China, there's a very interesting ancient observatory. They are all practically the same everywhere. So people have always been observing the sky and correcting a little the calendar systems. But over time, it happened so that the calendar system for life diverged from the calendar systems that were focused on the sky of stars and which were used by the ancients. I don't know why it happened. And the calendars that I use for Jyotish is republished from time to time. I don't use computers and calculating systems. I don't trust these things. I do everything manually. It's important for me. Everything I have learned is in my head. That is the best computer. And from childhood I understood that the only things they cannot take from you are those in your head.
Более того, когда я рассчитываю бадзи, я пользуюсь календарной системой. Вот недавно свой календарь уже издала до 2050 года пока.
I can recreate the Badzi calendar, even if the end of the world happens and everything will be burned. And I can recreate any calendar system in just a few months. If I have a gnomon, a kind of sundial, a kind of a sun pillar, I know how to do it. Of course, it took years of studies. I began to study astronomy and astrology at the age of 12. I was lucky in my life to have a book on astrology, and only some astrologers in Moscow have such a book. It was connected with the Egyptian knowledge. It was the Sumerian school, which later developed into the European school. So what had happened? In India, there was astrology, not astronomy, don't confuse these two. Astronomy is the observation of the stars. It's a science which studies how the celestial bodies are moving, how the planets of the solar system are moving. And there is also geomancy, the science of the earth, how the earth is arranged inside, how it breathes, how it all tunes in with the breathing of the heavens. And there is also astrology. It's when we read by the stars. Therefore, how can we separate astronomy and astrology? It's impossible, and step by step I'll try to tell you all about it. So, how did it happen in ancient times? Let's start with ancient China. I know about many different cultures, but people who are the golden standard for me are the warriors Usens. They are half warriors and half monks. And like in Shaolin we bow, it's a Shaolin bow. On the one hand you can protect yourself and the knowledge and the monastery, and on the other hand you are a monk, you are on the edge. On the one hand you can cure a man, but you can also kill him in 10 seconds. You may know only one plant for all. Like I posted recently about mandragora, it is a flower, but many people thought it existed only in Harry Potter books, like a mythical plant. Yes, and I was shocked with this information. So the fruit of mandragora may kill in one proportion and cure in the other. And where is that line? It's very soft. And of course, those people knew a lot. And I always tell my students, what we learn here is not a lot. It's all one thing. Feng Shui is tightly connected with Chinese astrology, with what we learn in meditation. So it's inner Feng Shui as well as the outer Feng Shui. But you should go further. You shouldn't stick only to geomancy. You should look further on the stars in order to understand how it works. And in the School of Fire and Light, we start with it. We talk about the heavens, where there is no duality. The duality. And now I'll go back to the ancient Egypt, where the legends say there are heavens of this world and there are heavens of another world, which is called Duat. Doesn't it remind you anything? The Duat. This is the duality. This is a place where there is no duality. And the hell, or Ad in Russian language, has passed through the Coptic Church to Christianity. So this way I'll be making parallels, and it will be very interesting for you. So, in China, there are the early heavens, and there are the later heavens, which we use. So our world, if we talk about our astronomy, it is a very small piece of macro-astronomy, where we study black and white holes, the black mass, which the ancients called chaos. So the chaos existed, and chaos is controlled by the gods of light. In ancient Egypt, it was said there is a god of sun who every day defeats a serpent who embodies chaos. And in China there is a circle of little white and black fish. The polarity, the duality, and it shouldn't be violated. There are maniacs and there are saints. And in this world, there will never be imbalance. There will always be a balance. This is duality. Every day we fight with evil things every day. And it's great. We do it every day. It creates such a variety. If you look at all the ancient religions, you'll understand that there is a common root. And can you imagine my teacher in the ashram I usually go to regularly? He's like father to me. He says, you have things we don't have. You can recollect and restore the first religion. From each everything has come. It's like the legend of the Tower of Babel. I ask the students, what's the difference between the pyramid and the Tower of Babel? They answer, people wanted to reach God, so the Tower of Babel was destroyed. In fact, the tower was made of brick, that's why it was destroyed, and the pyramids were made of stone. Things created by nature are more durable than things created by man. Therefore, whatever the man creates, chaos comes, destroys it, so that we could perfect ourselves and create further. There was a wonderful culture, Mesopotamia, so maybe when the gods saw they shouldn't help those Egyptians, because they were too arrogant. Or maybe actually they help everyone, all people, a little bit. So these people, the gods, they gave some seeds to Indians, they gave some seeds to Chinese, and in the ancient Egypt texts it was written that Osiris once told his wife that they needed to have some rest from each other and that he wanted to go on a business trip. So he went for 17 years to sow the good seeds around the world. And there was written what countries he visited. Meanwhile, she, his wife, controlled the Egypt, she ruled the Egypt. At that time, maybe it was Lemuria, or maybe some other country, pre-Atlantis country. The fact is that he visited all people around the world. He visited Mesopotamia, He was in ancient China, in India, Altai. He was even on the Danube. Then he returned home to Egypt and said, "Well, finally, I have handed over all the seeds of wheat, I gave to people the grape wine, I can rest now." But the chaos was even among the gods. As you know the story of Osiris and Isis, his brother tried to kill him. So it's clear that there was someone who spread that knowledge around the world. That knowledge has a single foundation. But calendars, in general, and writings are very different. But the basis is single. In ancient Egypt, there is the god of thunder and lightning, Min. And in Chinese astrology, we know the word Min Tan. It means the light place. There is a hieroglyph Min, which means light. So if you compare phonetic roots from everywhere, you'll come to the idea that earlier everything was single, unified. So let's go further. Then there was a need of a single calendar system. Ancient calendar systems were called agricultural systems because they were always aimed at some human needs. In China, that's an agricultural calendar which we now use in Bazi. It says that all seasons are different. If you read my book, all 24 seasons are described there, and it is said there when cordyceps blooms, when the geese scream, when and what to plant, what is happening in our bodies at this or that time. So I try to combine it with medicine. Because medicine also comes from that, it cannot be separated. It's only in our medicine they separate everything. Examining the kidneys, our doctors don't understand that these are also connected with the joints. And in ancient Egypt, there were no individual astronomers. The priest was both an architect and astronomer. Because all rooms were oriented to the cardinal points, directions, and according to the constellations. I soon hope to draw the sky of stars to restore the ancient Egyptian constellations. I draw quite well, and I have the Chinese sky of stars, the European is well known. But what's the difference in how you connect the stars? Even the famous plow of the Great Bear. In ancient Egypt, it was shown the cut-off bull's leg. And the polar star was not part of the bear, it was part of the dragon. And in Chinese tradition, the polar star is a pearl around which the dragon entwines. He's flying around this pearl. And in China, there are a lot of legends about dragons who chase this pearl. And it was considered great luck if someone got that pearl. But it's interesting, but I can speak many hours about this tradition, this Chinese tradition only. I'll try to make everything clear and mix everything. So why did they navigate by the polar star? Because the axis of the Earth is tilted in a way that the Earth looks at this point. This is the point which doesn't rotate when we are looking at the sky of stars. And the rest of the sky of stars rotates. The stars exist by themselves. Let's have a look at the constellation of Cassiopeia. The stars located in it are billions of light years apart from each other. And if you go off the Earth and fly to Mercury, you won't recognize the constellations. They will look different. So we cannot stick to that only. Even moving around the globe, because we travel a lot, I tell my students, I teach them, look at the Orion. Something appeared there between his legs. We cannot see it from our part of the world, but in India it's visible. There is nebula there, and on Cyprus it can be seen in summer. And every time we come to Mediterranean, to Levanta, why do we go there? Because the Sirius is rising. They've always been guided by Sirius in ancient Egypt. Why? Maybe at that time the axis of Earth bent down so that Sirius was visible instead of the polar star. Sirius is situated next to Orion. The hunter Orion is a Sirius, the main god in all ancient traditions. Orion is a Sirius walking with the rod. And rod to the rod, he is joining with his wife, Isis. And Sirius is a part of Isis. Isis, the goddess, and the axis of the earth used to look at Isis. It's definitely. And now, when Sirius was seen early in the morning and late in the evening, the high water season of the Nile began. Sometimes they ask me on YouTube, what time are you from? Well, I can say more there than here, as all the culture was left there at that time.
Где я больше? Наверное, не здесь все-таки. Там вся концентрация, потому что там все знания, там вся основная культура, там другой народ совершенно жил. Так вот, я сейчас говорю о созвездии.
Now I'm talking about the constellations which existed apart from those you know, like Scorpio and Pisces. There used to be no constellation of Scorpio earlier. Do you know where it was situated? There are vectors. Opposite of Scorpio, there's Taurus. And I will tell you something you won't read anywhere. When there was a 2000-year period of Taurus, the constellation of Scorpio was different. It was called the constellation of Eagle, and it was considered to be a constellation of good prospects and opportunities, like in China. But approximately around 2000 years BC, I cannot say exactly because there used to be 360 days in a year, and in the Middle Egyptian kingdom they began to write 360 days plus 5 days. And the Scorpio became suddenly the constellation of Scorpio. It was connected with the goddess. There appeared the name of Scorpio at that time. In Egypt there was duality too. There was this goddess, Hathor, the goddess of love, wisdom and medicine. But when they made her angry, she turned into a lioness, a seven-headed. She had 7 arrows. These are floods, epidemics, etc. And she launched these arrows. She was very furious. And when she turned into a Scorpio, this constellation appeared. There's a legend that when the last time she got angry, she became a Scorpio with red eyes, and that was the time this constellation appeared. Such thing happened at the breaking of civilization. The last breaking of civilization took place precisely in the constellation of Scorpio, so don't make this goddess angry. The last time she became very angry, she practically swept away all of humanity. But the god said, we should distract her. She mixed the hematite powder with beer and poured it around the earth. She thought it was human blood, she got drunk of it, fell asleep, but later she understood she was deceived. She got offended, ran away to the south and concealed herself there, like all normal women do. And only one thing could trick her out of there. That was marriage with gore. Well, she shouldn't have done that, but she was a woman. But in every legend there is truth describing global processes, which are based on astronomy and are connected with astronomy. And astrology is based on that knowledge. Next, astrology should be based on the really existing stars. But if ephemerides were used the way they look now in the old Sumerian tradition, in 1700 BC, how can we use this calendar now? Astronomers and astrologers have been fighting since 70s, I mean the Russian school here. And very good astronomers, for example, my teacher, my astronomy teacher, she went to Israel because here it was hard to work for her. Now she is teaching children in a planetarium. So she told me that when astrologers, well, the so-called astrologers, would come to her at the planetarium and had their classes, they were discussing every time, quarreling. My teacher was saying to them, she used to say, look at the sky of stars, everything lags behind your ephemeris by 1.5 years, so how can you draw maps based on which you make predictions? But after I found out this fact when I was 17, I was disappointed and I became interested in everything related to the Eastern culture, and I have no relation to the European school of astrology. Although the school itself is great, it's Sumerian and partly Persian astrological system. It also had a little influence on the Vedic horoscopes in the region bordering the desert. But in general, the Vedic astrological system differs a lot. But of course, in each astrological system, there are 5 planets. Yes, there are even more than 9 of them in the system, but such planets like Neptune and Uranus, they are very far from us and have little influence, so we may just not consider them. If we talk about the Chinese system, Bazi, all that is also considered. So these 12 earthly animals are also associated with the planets and its influence. And what is in common? There are also 29 constellations in Jyotish. And what is a constellation? These are pieces of the starry sky, of the sky of stars. They are like cut-off pieces of melon. And each star in the constellation also has its impact. And then you can look at every star in this constellation, but it turns on and off at a certain time. Some people say, how can stars influence each other? And maybe it's one of the most important questions. Let's understand that there are many different astrological systems, but all of them have the same root. But we're interested how it works for us, how it influences us. The fact that we are able to influence each other is understandable. If you take a puddle and twist the water in it, the entire puddle will move in one direction. It shows how all the droplets in the water are interconnected. We are all also interconnected. For example, you meet a friend, she told you something, and that starts influencing your destiny. You come here to me, and something starts happening with your brain that also changes you. Don't laugh. Yes, it actually changes everything. But it's the Newton's second law. Every body tends to move uniformly accelerated or tends to rest, till it encounters a body with a larger magnetism. When it does, it starts to accelerate. It's like you're accelerating going down the hill. it's the same. And you go into certain vibrations. So what else? Each of us has his own world. Sometimes you say something to a person, but your words don't reach him. Why? Because he's in his own layer. He cannot hear you. When we connect other people, yes, we do, but we are all in our own layers. For example, Sasha is in his own layer, but today he honestly said we are like a collective mind together. Because a lot of people write to me in Facebook and YouTube, and my administrators answer all the clients' questions. Someone writes a client a contact number, someone helps people with payment details, and so on. So that's how we work. Together we are like a system. I'm a system, I'm a brand. And this is my system around me. The stars are my team. This is a layer. Everyone has their own layer, but we influence each other, and the land, the location also influences us. For example, you meet a Ukrainian in Germany, and he has become greedy. Well, because German people, they count money carefully, and when we are traveling, we usually pay for each other in the restaurant. Someone treats everyone today and the other one next day, and so on. But German people are careful with money, and Ukrainians who's been living in Germany won't do like that. They have the Germanization of the brain, so to say. Some people have Americanization of the brain, and so on. But stars are bodies whose magnetism is larger than ours. And we all have a red ball inside, as I tell you when we are meditating. We look at this red ball because the navel is the center of vital energy. In Slavic culture it's belly, in the Vedic culture it's jiva, the one that gives life. In Egypt, these are two hands called ka, the life power, which is transmitted from mom and dad to a human being. So you have something inside your belly, which in the planet is called the core. But who said that a planet is not a living being? It is a huge living being. So you are like lice on the red ball of the planet Earth. Because we also have tiny creatures in our bodies, right? And sometimes we are drinking medicine against them. Wow, it's important for me that you could understand that everything is created according to a single principle, and everyone is affected by that. You are laughing, but all that is a course of astronomy. Right, let's go on further. So our planet has a magnetism. How do we feel that? We are not flying away. We stick to it, we stand on it. And when we have less strength with old age, when we have less vital energy, we are drawn by gravitation and we bend down. Then we merge with Earth, because we are made of clay. In all cultures they say so. People don't believe in it. They also don't believe in the stars. I once showed the stars to a rabbi who was writing a spiritual book. It was in Rishikesh. Yes, really a paradox in Rishikesh. We shared knowledge with each other. He was writing a book about his gods, but he forgot about the stars. I told him that in your Torah it's all about the stars, and it's written there. So look at them, here they are. You should read by the stars. Astrology is reading by the stars. You shouldn't look into a computer and draw the lines. Here they are, the stars. They just have bigger magnetism, and they have connections with us, like threads, which can turn on and turn off. In some periods they have a good mood, in others they have a bad mood, therefore they influence us in different ways. So what happens with a human being? In general, what does the horoscope mean? We can talk in complicated terms. Well, when you talk to a person and he uses complicated words and you don't understand him, he's trying to confuse you because he's hiding his ignorance. When you come to an astrologer and he says that, for example, your black moon is in the 12th house, so your son can be born with a disease. Well, that example is not the worst, because usually they say a black moon is in your 12th house, and, for example, Venus met with Saturn, which is really a complete disaster. In this situation, when you ask an astrologer a question, for example, why I have no money or little money, and he says to you, you have a black moon in the 12th house and your Venus has gone to shiny a long time ago. And that house is empty in your house, and maybe he doesn't understand at all why you don't have money. So it means the astrologer confuses you and he doesn't know his signs. So when you come to an astrologer, to a good astrologer, and you ask what is happening to me, a good astrologer doesn't speak in complicated terms. Many of you have been to my horoscope consultations. Did I tell you that you have a Pinyao or Pinyu in your horoscope? No, I usually tell you clearly. 2 years ago, a period in your life started, and this and that happened. So you had to change this and that. That's why such events are happening in your life. And you shouldn't date with this girl, you will meet another one. And a person understands. Of course, there are different situations, and sometimes very funny situations. For example, yesterday, I think this girl is watching my videos. It was not the first consultation. She has made a horoscope earlier, because usually I make a horoscope and it's like your passport. Later, if you have some problems, urgent questions, you come to me, and on the basis of your horoscope we discuss the situation. So this married girl came to me, and she said that she doesn't know what to do with her husband. They have bad relationships, and she says that she met a new man. But I understand that that man is harmful for her, and I advise her to stay with her husband, because anyway, in half a year that he may have a disease. Well, of course, she was happy to hear that, but I advised her to make an ultrasound investigation of all his organs and to be careful with his health. But what is interesting, in an hour she called back and asks a question: if her husband has a lover, and of what age? Can you imagine? That's a question to an astrologer who has only the horoscope of that woman available. Of course, I could tell her the answer, because I could use some other techniques. I'm not only an astrologer. I have many other techniques like Idzin, which is associated with Badzi, or Stratogenes technique, due to which I know what some country leader will do in the coming future, in this or that time. For me, it's a single unified system. I don't understand how one can do an operation with a single scalpel. As an astrologer, I have a lot of different tools. I'm just telling you what kind of questions people ask, and that wasn't the most critical and strangest case. But usually people ask questions like, does this person match me by horoscope or not? Is this day favorable for me or not? But let's come back to the question, what is a horoscope? Each of you, like a biological robot, has your own software. Some people may get offended, but like today, a woman wrote to me in YouTube. She was offended. You call children human beings. It's offensive, she said. while I call people a form of life and biorobots? Because something different lives inside of us. We are programmed. There are some identical programs like marriage, children. These are programs. They are switched on and off. People are activated by hormones, and all people have it the same way. But you have unique horoscopes, which is your unique software. There's something in common, but each has something unique. Each of you. But I will tell you more. Each of you is a universe. You're not gods, and moreover, you will never be gods, but you're created in the image and likeness. And there is a universe inside of you. Do you know how a matrix photo is made? So there is an image, and with the help of light, there's a picture on the matrix, as in photography. And let's say you can make copies from it. So if there is something, you can make a copy. The subcortex of your brain is a matrix that can photograph the sky of stars. Moreover, it's like a live broadcasting. So the sky of stars, all the influence of all the stars and planets is in your head, like a display. So you cannot even call it an influence. It's not a vibration, not the influence of light. It's just the same here and there, the live broadcasting. It's a live broadcasting into the brain of all living beings, humans and spiders, flies. They all have chakras, like you do. I exaggerate but even a worm has his own horoscope, destiny. But at some point of time, the frozen pictures switches on, which moves to the deeper layers of the brain and forms your character. So these electrical connections of this picture get into DNA molecules and start to change everything inside you according to your character. Is this clear? This happens at the moment of your first breath. You're swimming peacefully in the mom's belly, and what we call the soul is traveling through the worlds. It's sometimes here and sometimes there, and we can see it through the tailbone on gas discharge visualization diagnostics. That's a phenomenon. It's so pleasant to observe these small pieces going there and back during pregnancy. It doesn't exist in time or in peace. And now the time has come, something starts beating. This is called earth impulses through Yun-Tuan point, which send certain currents into the tummy of a woman. This way, the earth helps a woman give birth. So here is the question. If the earth and prana-opana, which are switched on there, help to give birth to a child, then what way should a woman give birth? In such a way that the child pushes his head to the center of the earth. Then the earth can help children be born. In Africa it was that way. There were special maternity bricks, a device that fixed the woman's elbows and pelvis a little bit. And the woman crouched, leaned on them, and gave birth. And then the midwives were already catching the baby there. So the earth helps the child. And who helps us when we give birth? The influence of medications, which have negative effect on your mental health, and in 3 years they all start having panic attacks. The stars and the Mother Earth helps us. We call her the Mother Earth. So the moment this creature flew out of you, it's still thinking to breathe or not to breathe, but he has everything programmed. He takes in his first breath, being in stress, inhales, and at that moment when prana, that's by Indian tradition, enters your body, and by Chinese tradition, it closes the circuit, creating something that doesn't change. The program in the subcortex is activated, and the skies are photographed at this moment of time. So this photo, like your passport, penetrates the next layer of your inner heavens, or the cortex of the brain, like a layer. So we have different layers. It penetrates, and small electrical connections instantly begin to build your entire character. Why is the character? Because through the character, the horoscope starts materializing in this life. The planets were photographed here, but everyone knows that everyone has their own character. Each planet has its own character. Mars is aggressive, Venus is cunning as a woman. Venus is, in general, it has masculine nature. In the ancient world, Venus was depicted with a big beard. Did you know that? And when Venus meets Saturn, it's very bad. It's demon's influence. And Rahu is a completely different topic. When you meet Rahu, you become totally mad, crazy. It's like you just get ill, like a flu. So you shouldn't pay attention to such people who are in Rahu period. And they say Rahu is when you shouldn't trust yourself. You should go to a good astrologer and trust a good astrologer. But let's come back. So this map has formed your character, and due to it you should choose something in your destiny. One woman debated with me today that all of us have the same possibilities, that we are equal. But it's not so. I know what I'm talking about. And I like to explain you everything in images. It's easier, like for children. And I told her like to a child. I gave her a comparison. I told her, you know, it's hard to meet a monkey when you're an Eskimo. So do you understand what I mean? That all people are born in different environment. Each of us, according to our horoscope, we have our own layers. And if, according to your layer, you should marry a drug addict, you will meet only such kind of people in your layer, and you'll meet only such men. If in your layer you're at a certain level of spirituality, you're a sattva, you'll meet a man whose father is a rabbi. You will get acquainted with another one, and his father is an imam. Or the third, and his family. In his family there are Brahmins. So everyone is in their own layer, and in this layer you can also choose, but you choose according to your character. For example, a life situation. A rich man was taken away from a family by a woman. Of course, she wants him to marry her. She has put a lot of effort for that. And he says, I will not get married again. A woman with one character may say, well, don't marry me. And the other woman may say, she makes everything possible. And she says, but how come my mother doesn't understand me, a child is without a father, and so on. And the man gives in and registers the marriage, because the woman has a different character. So we build our destiny according to manifestation of our character. It's the main thing. Why? Because it's the key to changing destiny and your horoscope. So when you make a small effort on yourself and change your character, you can reverse the line of destiny in the opposite direction. a more positive for you, because we can calculate it through our horoscope. But it's difficult to read a book in the darkness, as long as you don't have a system, as long as you don't have a map of your sky of stars. It doesn't matter what kind of system, Badzi or Jyotish. A system which will help you to identify the qualities and form different life nodes. Till that moment you don't see the whole line of your life. You don't know how to move further. Because Jyotish is also translated as the circle that the falcon makes. Beautiful, isn't it? So you make a breath and you fly, and then you reach the destination. And you make a kind of transition. There is a book in Egypt. This book is called The Book of the Dead. In translation from the Egyptian, it sounds like the book of life, the book of materialization in another place, the book of transition. There's also such a book in Tibet, the Book of the Dead. It describes how to behave correctly during this transition, so that it would be safe. I've been there and I know it. I've been guiding some people there so that they could get to the right place. It's like an underground metro station, but you should know where to go and how to behave there, in that place. We have lost this knowledge. These times were called the dark times when this knowledge was lost. But I know that you learned history and religion from the modern books, but I learned it from different sources. So I know that at first there was the ancient world, then antiquity. When the Egypt was dying, the priests had to perform certain actions so that their culture could survive in a different variant. That's how Christianity appeared. But later, this culture gave an impulse to the antiquity. Antiquity was not so in-depth, it was superficial, but after that the dark times began. After the Third Ecumenical Council and after Christianity. There was Inquisition and the plague epidemics. So you understand now where from the plague appeared. It was the seven-arrowed goddess of love who was no longer respected. It was time when everything turned upside down, when the woman wasn't respected. It was the time of patriarchate establishment. And patriarchate came along with the plague.
Которую перестали уважать. Это возникновение патриархата. То есть это был признак, когда все перевернули с ног на голову, неуважение к женщине. Патриархат вместе с чумой пришел.
Later, there was a more modern history we know, and all the ancient cultures that told about this transition and about ethics, they were lost. There were no sad people in Egypt. They were easygoing and cheerful. We may say that they believed in positive thinking, but they just knew that thoughts were material. I'm not sure exactly, but the Egyptologists say that astrology didn't exist in Egypt because it wasn't necessary. Because it was a place where the gods used to come and talk to people. And if people had questions, the god came and gave them the answers. If you have a question, you come to your teacher or an astrologist. But they didn't need that. Gods came to them. With that purpose, they came to the temple of their god. They brought some fruit, gold, and so on. And in a certain place they fell asleep, and in a dream they were given answers to all their questions. Maybe. I don't know that exactly. I haven't found this information yet. I suspect that there were some cultures which were closed in secret priesthood, because Jyotish is also closed. I know people who study Jyotish in Europe, but I should tell you that the Jyotish you study has nothing to do with the Jyotish I make. When I studied with a pandit in one village. It was a long time ago. Here is my witness. She's with me. So this book, a pandit gave me this ancient astrology book, and he told me that for each Brahmin there is one such book, and he gave me his book, but I should write to Calcutta that I have lost this book, and later they will bring me a new one. So this system was partially closed. The pandits were forbidden to learn English so that they couldn't communicate with foreigners. Of course, there are some Europeans who learned Hindi, but I still know that the true pandit still don't communicate with white people. It's polluting them. So, there are two types of Jyotish, and all people speak about that. When I was in Varanasi with another teacher, he asked me, what school did I learn? This or that. So he said, okay, I understand, we can continue studying. So, I mean, astrology as a magical knowledge, it was hidden all the time in some particular circles. In China, Bazi and Feng Shui, it was a system which was really closed in the temples, and they opened only when the Cultural Revolution threw out all proponents of the Chinese culture to other countries. When they came to Europe and America with nothing to eat, they had to bring this knowledge out and to sell this knowledge. So maybe, well, let's think positively. The time has come when all secrets should be revealed. But the Chinese and Indians are still living, and there is no one left in Egypt. So we cannot say definitely whether astrology was there in Egypt. But astronomy existed, definitely. And the 5 planets they believed in, Mars, Venus, Jupiter, Mercury and Saturn, are depicted as gods there. And they also knew about different constellations, which were taken into account when making predictions and forming the calendar. In the cultures I know, in the Chinese tradition, there are 28 constellations. We study them, you can read information and influence about them. And the Chinese had 28 constellations, but in the Vedic tradition they say about 29 sectors and constellations. Maybe the Chinese have missed one of the sectors because it's very small, it's about 5-7 degrees, its influence is almost invisible, but you know, sometimes such influences can be fatal. Sometimes in horoscope you see everything may seem fine, but then for 3 months something comes, and over these 3 months your destiny is ruined. Therefore, if there are some common social issues, Bazi is enough for me. And you know that I can make a blitz consultation very quickly, as you can say, at once. But when it's necessary to consider more deeply, or there's something I don't like in the Bazi map, or when the question is very serious, whether the person is going to get ill or not, if he will be assassinated or not, then I make Jyotish. It's a very hard work, it's more complicated. Or when a person asks to which caste he belongs, you know this caste system. You know that by destination each of us belongs to some layer of society by birth. One is born in the family of merchants, and he has such a mission. The others in the family of sattva, the third in the family of kshatriyas. Some others serve people. You know what is Ayurveda? It's a medical system, a system that examines the human body, and it is based on the dosha diagnosis by body types. So there is a soft type, kapha, vata is a thin type, and the third type, it's like fire.
я образно говорю, хотя бы чуть-чуть, чтобы вы поняли. И для
And
всех
for
этих
all these
типажей лечение
types,
будет
the
разное.
treatment is
Более
different.
того, есть же
Moreover,
смешанные типажи, нет чистой
there are
капы,
also mixed types. There are no pure
либо
types.
капха-пита. И дается
Kapha-vata or
разное
Kapha-pita.
лечение. Лечение
Herbal
травами было во всех
therapy
культурах. Я вам должна сказать, что
helps
аюрведа
here,
Египта
and
не
herbal
уступает
therapy has existed in all
аюрведе
cultures, and
Индии.
Ayurveda of Egypt is as good
И
as
в
Ayurveda
древности
in
лечили
India.
те
And in
заболевания,
ancient
которые наши
times, they
медики лечить
treated
не
the
могут.
diseases that our doctors
И
cannot
были
cure.
найдены в Египте
And in Egypt,
хирургические
there were found
инструменты,
surgical
которые
instruments
доказывают, что
which
в
proved
2000 году
they
до нашей
performed
эры
operations
делали
on
операции на
eyes
глазах у
and
удаления
removed
рака.
cataract.
Хи-хи.
2000
А те
years BC.
сплавы, которые у них были,
And
металлов,
we
до
still
сих
cannot
пор
reproduce
наши
these alloys
металлурги
of metals.
воспроизвести не могут. Можно, конечно, со мной поспорить, но я вам
But
точно говорю, что
I
золото
definitely can tell
изготавливать
you
умели. Да.
that
В
they
Нубии
knew
было
how to
всегда
make
много
gold.
золота. И вот первый
In
корень названия
Nubia,
этой страны, он и говорит
which is
золота.
translated as golden,
Но
there's
они
always
умели
been a lot of
изготавливать.
gold, and they could make it.
Я вот недавно рассказывала о своей дочери.
Recently, I
Так понимаю,
explained to
что
my
многие из вас
daughter,
не знают,
and
почему
maybe
есть
some of
красное
you
золото,
don't know,
почему есть
that
белое.
red gold contained
Красное
the
тогда
addition
медное
of copper.
Так вот раньше
So
изготавливали
earlier they
золото
used
не
to
из золотоносной руды,
to
но
make
медь в
gold
этом принимала
with the
участие,
addition
были
of copper.
другие металлы. То есть раньше была какая-то
So
такая
earlier there
интересная
used to be a
цивилизация, которая не
civilization
придавала
that didn't
значения
attribute much
механике, механизму, хотя у
importance
них
to
были различные
mechanics and
но они
mechanisms,
знали,
but they
как
knew
работает
how
звук,
the sound worked
они знали,
and
как
how the
работает
waves
звук.
worked.
Они
They
все
knew
это
these
учили.
principles and considered
Это отдельная
that.
тема, это будет отдельная лекция. Сейчас
But now
все-таки
let's get
вернемся
back to the topic of
к
stars'
теме
influence.
влияния звезд. Я вас
So now you
убедила, что гороскоп у
understand
каждого
what is a
существует, и вам
horoscope.
понятно, что это такое, да? То есть это то программное
It's a kind of software
обеспечение, из
which
которого вам
is very
выбраться
difficult to
очень
get out
тяжело.
of,
Но
but you can do it
можно
for
на
some
сколько-то
percentage.
процентов, и я вам
I
гарантирую,
can
что
tell
на
you
30%
that you can
своей
control your
судьбой
destiny
управлять
by at least
можно.
30%.
Но для этого
But for
нужно
that, you need to
прийти и
come and
составить
make a
гороскоп
horoscope with a good astrologer,
человека, который
a
знал
person who
свою
knows
природу,
his subject.
хорошего астролога.
I don't
Я
consider
себя
myself
не
an
считаю
astrologer. I
астрологом,
consider
себя
myself
считаю
to be a
учителем. Я
master
считаю,
and a
что
teacher.
называют мастера. Я
Sometimes
называю
I
иногда
call
то, что
what
я
I
делаю,
do the services of an astropsychologist,
потому что
because
не
you
важно
don't
вам
need to
знать,
know
когда
when
какая
and
планета
where
для вас становится
the planet in your
ретроградной.
horoscope
Вам это не
became
нужно. Вы приходите
retrogressive.
ко мне, чтобы
You
понять
come to me
свою
to understand your
судьбу,
destiny
понять свое
and your life
предназначение.
purpose,
Для того,
in order to
чтобы
find a way to
найти
become
путь, как
more
стать более
successful,
удачливым, через
or
что
which
стоит
activities are best for
зарабатывать
making
деньги, через
money
что
and which ones will never
никогда
bring
вы не
money.
заработаете деньги.
But
Но
they
это
could be
можно
used as a
использовать
hobby,
как
for
хобби.
example.
Иногда
Sometimes
вы
you ask
задаете вопрос,
why.
почему?
It's
Тоже
logical.
логичный вопрос. Тогда я говорю, что в
I usually
прошлой
answer, in the
жизни
past life
ты
you
обманывал
deceived people, you
людей,
did this and
делал
that,
то-то и
so
то-то,
in this
поэтому
life,
в этой жизни
don't do
этим не
it, you
надо
shouldn't do it.
заниматься. Ты всегда был
You've
упрямым,
always been
поэтому в этой
stubborn,
жизни,
so in
когда ты
this
будешь
life,
проявлять
when you
упрямство,
are
у тебя будут случаться
stubborn, you
неприятные
will have unpleasant
ситуации.
situations.
А этот
And this man
мужчина
came
к
into
тебе
your life
пришел
to
для того, чтобы
revenge, because in
отомстить,
previous
что в
life you
прошлой
took
жизни
him
ты
away
его
from the
увела из
family.
семьи.
It can be seen in horoscope.
Это
At
все
least
видно.
previous
Но хотя бы
lives
вот
leave
последние
prints in
жизни,
your
они несут
horoscope.
отпечатки на нашем гороскопе. Людям
But it's
помочь
always
всегда
not enough for
можно. У
people.
нас есть духовная
We have
алчность.
spiritual
Они
greed.
спрашивают,
And
а
people
когда-то,
ask
кем
me
я была, кем я
sometimes
была.
who I was in my previous lives and so on. And I
Это вы сами
usually
можете
say,
вспомнить. Ну, не
you should
потому
practice
что
regression. It's not
я
because I don't want to
хочу
tell
вам
you.
отвечать на этот вопрос,
It's
а потому
It's
что
just
я
I
хочу,
want
чтобы
you
вы
to learn
сами
everything
всё
by
сделали.
yourselves.
Знаете, есть разные
You know,
мамаши.
there are different
Есть
types of
мамашки, для
mothers.
которых важно
There are
человека
moms
притянуть к
who want a
себе,
child to
сделать
make him
свою
their
работу.
slave.
А есть мамашки,
And there are
которые
moms
хотят
who
научить,
want
чтобы
to
ребеночек сам
teach
справлялся.
children
Я, например,
everything
таким
so that they could
учителям.
do
Я от
everything
вас
by
не скрываю
themselves.
ничего. Некоторые
I'm a
говорят,
mom
ой,
like
вы
that.
такие интересные
I
люди,
don't
бесплатно
hide any
выкладываете. Я хочу,
information
чтобы
from
вы это
you.
знали.
I want you to
Более того, я
learn
хочу, чтобы вы
everything,
все научились
and I
составлять
want you to
бадзи.
learn how to
Бадзи
make
очень легкая
horoscopes.
система. Китайский
Because
гороскоп
Badzi is very
предельно
easy
легкая
system.
система.
The
Может быть,
Chinese
вы хотя
system
бы не
is very
будете
easy.
видеть всё,
Maybe you
но, по
won't
крайней
see
мере, будете
everything
знать,
like
когда у вас
me,
хорошие дни,
but at
когда
least
плохие,
you'll
вы
know
можете
which
посмотреть,
days
подходит вам
are
работник, не подходит
favorable or
работник.
not for you.
Я вам дам механизмы
If
и
the
расскажу
worker
вам,
is
как
suitable or
подбирать
not.
работников, чтобы
I'll
у
give you
вас
the
магазин
mechanisms
приносил
of
прибыль.
how to select employees so that
Это
your
может
store
сделать
would make
каждый,
profit.
даже тот, у кого нет
Everyone
высшего
can do it,
образования.
even those who don't have
Даже не
higher
очень
education. tradition. You know, strange as it may be, worst of all at horoscopes are the accountants. I don't know explain why. Very good are the dentists. It's from my experience. I had a group once. Well, I used to travel a lot teaching Badzim, and I had a group in a small town. I don't remember the exact name of the town. Maybe Schachtings. I don't know. But it's a wonderful town, and I had a group of accountants whom I taught Badzi in 3 days. Oh my god, I was so tired, but after this group I can teach anyone. I don't know why. Maybe because they are used to doing everything according to a certain scheme, according to which they could do Badzi as well. But you have to think there and use logical thinking. Military girls and girls from police can do it very well. I don't know why. Maybe they have good logical thinking. But they are amazing at horoscopes. In general, 90% of students can learn to do horoscopes very well. But of course, they won't see some things as I see them. I don't know why. Maybe they will lack experience. Because there is such thing as practice and personal experience. I'm in Badzi for more than 20 years. And you see it in horoscope. You make a horoscope and you just see it there. Once I met a woman in a European system in Moscow. It was when I was 16. So this girl from Moscow could perfectly read horoscopes by ephemerides. I wanted so much to learn to do it, but now I have come to that level. So what are the questions people ask me? Another important thing, the universe has laws that shouldn't be violated. And people who live in the system of spirituality, like me, will never do that. For example, I never give advice. Many of you have been to my horoscopes. I'm not giving you advice, I'm just offering some options. And I always tell you that you are to decide. I don't have right to give advice, and I don't have right to say anything you don't ask me. So, before you come to me, you should prepare a list of questions you're interested in, so that you wouldn't get offended, like in that example when a woman was offended that at the consultation I didn't tell her that her husband had a lover. If she would ask on the consultation, I would think, but I would think twice, because there's ethics. But if you don't ask, I will not give the answer. So, I'm not a fortune teller. Astrology is not a fortune-telling system. If a person believes he'll come to an astrologer, and the astrologer will tell something like, "You were born on a sunny day. There was rain in the evening, the frogs started singing, and the mother understood, an unusual soul was born." No, an astrologer will not say words like that. Well, sometimes an astrologer wants to prove a newcomer his knowledge, and he will say something like, "You had a difficult period in 2009. What happened?" And the person says, "Well, I couldn't get my PhD degree or something." Then we discuss why was that. We are looking for the reason, because there are always some crossroads in destiny. You can go one side or another side. And one side may be wrong at all. It will be walking around in circles. And the astrologer may say that you shouldn't have gone that way. The other way would have been better. But at the right time, your gates will open and you can go the right way. Or in 6 months you will have a new opportunity. Hold on to it. Or vice versa, in 3 months you will get bad offer. Don't agree. But for that, at least I should know what you're doing in life, your profession. I understand a lot of people have difficulty with money at the moment, and I want to help. And it's not difficult for me to make a quick consultation, a blitz consultation for you. And at the blitz consultation I often get a question: what should I do for a living? Here is my date of birth. what should I do as a profession? For that, you need to have my experience. It would be correct to ask questions like this. I have a degree in law, I've been working in court for some years, but I want to quit this profession. What sphere of activity should I choose, right? Or for a girl, I've got a higher education in architecture, I've never worked in this sphere, I'm on maternity leave. So I should know at least anything. I should understand whether you have education or not to give any kind of recommendation for you. Just not to list all the options. But to speak specifically on the already existing criteria. So, the better you ask the question, the clearer I will answer. And it's really difficult to ask questions correctly. And I always tell that to my students. When we do meditation central channel, we are building a link between your inner heart power and the brain. And people's hearts are usually not connected with the brain. The heart is like a computer monitor. And the brain is like a processor. If there is no connection between them, what's the point in the computer? Is it more clear? So, it's very hard to ask questions correctly. Our practice, Qigong, helps to improve these connections. And when you reach to a certain level, when you reach a certain period in Qigong, an interesting phenomenon happens to you. Your soul is leaving the body. I'll tell you at once, it's not scary when there is a teacher. You won't live anywhere outside the teacher. Don't worry, you'll come back and everything will be fine. But at this moment, a kind of upgrading happens. At this moment, you quietly erase all the programs. The brain expands and works not for 5%, but with each going out for more than 5%. And you start to see the world differently. The feeling is not very pleasant, as people say. Do you know how the mummies were made in ancient times? At first, in ancient times, they eliminated the brain of the mummy. Later, they learned how to dry it out. So through the nostrils, they blended the brain and this liquid was going out. Why am I telling it? When a person experiences his soul leaving the body, it seems like the brain is turned over, and the feeling is not very pleasant. You see everything in a different way. You know, previously my students had to practice with me for 5 years at the retreats, and at the expense of my energy I helped them to survive this experience. I don't know what happened, but now my students who just watch me on YouTube and practice only what there's on YouTube can reach this level. Every day people write to me what they've experienced. Only today a girl wrote to me that she was feeling bad, she lost consciousness, she was very weak and couldn't understand anything. She said, "Everything is so different for me now." And I told her, "Congratulations." Another girl writes, "How to open the third eye?" Well, it's a complete nonsense. Well, at least open your two together with your heart. But as a teacher, I'm very happy. I'm glad that people practicing by YouTube, they have a chance not to be born again in this matrix, in this educational program. And what's inside your horoscope is a proof that you live in a computer game. And when you play in this computer game, don't you want to know the map by which you are moving? And what's the final destination? Not just to live in order to give away your energy somewhere. Not just to give birth to many other rabbits which are just fresh meat at this factory. We want to know more than that. But this is of course the topic for another lecture. I want you to understand that you don't belong to your family, or you don't belong to your society, or the country, or your land. Everything is so spiritually driven here. The earth is a living creature on which you parasitize, but it loves you. Sometimes people ask me why I post this information for free, because I love you, even when I'm joking on you. The sun loves you. It's a deity. It's something of a higher mind. I will tell you, you're not gods, and you will never be gods. You can go beyond what you were put into, but you cannot compare with the planets, galaxies, and stars. They have other vibrations, but they are alive. Learn to worship for a start. You've always been taught something different, that you are a leader, that you can do anything. But if in your horoscope it's written that you are a baker, you can be the leader of the bakers, and you will not jump beyond that. But what's wrong with that, to be a baker, baking your own bread? You know, personally, I love to sell goods on the New Year's Eve. So what's wrong with being a good baker? To bake your bread yourself, even if you have 10 employees, to bake a croissant yourself, if you just like it. If it brings joy to you, what's wrong with that? And there are women who perfectly clean their apartments. Why should they study for an accountant? And they can serve this way. There are people who aren't capable of meditation, but they can serve. And it's wonderful to serve other people, and everyone should learn to worship, because it's not interesting to live with a man or a woman who doesn't know how to worship. Maybe it's necessary to turn down your ego a little so that you could learn to do it and develop yourself. You can worship even an ant. It also does some work. It cleans the forest. Or to worship a tree. But I like it when maybe we came from a nation who were feeling the close connection with nature. Because when in meditation I say, stand in the position of a tree for half an hour, they ask me, is it to hug a tree? So they know at least something. So in that I meant the energy tree, so to hug the energy tree and to wait. If a person has never loved a woman, how can I explain him what is meditation? Because meditation is like when you're waiting for a beloved woman and here she comes and you feel a great joy inside. We are waiting for this state in meditation. And here it comes, but you don't remember the time. It seems you've been sitting for 5 minutes, but you've been sitting for 3 hours in meditation. So everything is so unified. And a lot of people ask me, like a woman today, and she asked me if I do natal maps, if I teach natal horoscopes, such kind of questions. But I understood what she meant. I told her that it's not, our system is not a Western system, not Western astrology. I advise people to study Badzi astrology. And if you study Badzi, you will be able to tell more about the horoscope than any Western astrologer. And you know, everyone knows I'm a very busy person, but I never refuse to answer your questions, even when I come home at 11 p.m. When I do a Feng Shui project for people or a horoscope, I speak orally and ask people to record everything on a dictaphone. Just imagine with my workload to draw a horoscope for 50, 60 pages on computer or in writing. So who will read that? And so many people would lose the opportunity to meet with me. What for? I wonder if such a person would read these 60 pages on the topic of retrograde planets, or if he will look through this information, through these graphs, without understanding anything. After my consultation, you can just listen once again what you recorded on a dictaphone.
и читать о ретроградности планет. Вам же хочется разобраться, а потом вы пытаетесь выяснить еще что-то, и опять ничего не понимаете.
So it's not necessary to read these 50-60 pages. This is time used in vain. In this time you could learn several languages and communicate with Italians and Englishmen. So people just don't know the value of time. Yes, time and space do not exist, but time needs to be valued, because you're given a circle of your life, and in this circle you need to manage a lot of things, along with what we do in the practices. As for my students, people often ask me, what is my teaching, yoga, and so on. I help my students no longer be born in this world. In Tibet, it's called going out of the wheel of samsara, or permanent incarnations. If you want to do that, welcome to our school. If you're afraid to do that, then you should go to Krishnaids. So everyone has their own way, their own school. And there are different types of yoga. If you want to jump, this is Kundalini yoga. But if you want to experience Kundalini several times and soul live in the body and to go out of the samsara wheel, this is to us. We are going along the path of Raja Yoga. This is a conscious life. I cannot get offended at someone. I always tell Sasha, don't be afraid, it's people's ignorance being done. So everything being done is either the guna of rajas or the guna of ignorance. If a girl wants to fall in love, it's not her who wants to fall in love, this is Raja Guna. Or a girl meditates in my lecture, this is Sattva Guna. So it's when you understand what is happening with you, inside of you. This is ego started talking, and this is compassion has awakened. When you realize your own self, this is the path to the goal mentioned above, not longer be born here, in order not to be limited by your horoscope. But to which extent are we free and can change our horoscope? By 30%. You should remember this number. And here is the question, what is the rest 60%? And that's what you've gained in previous reincarnations, these limitations. With practice, they will wear off. And also the gains of your family line. So when I look at the horoscope, if by family line, by the male line, there are problems with alcohol, such men will be attracted to these kind of women. How can you run away from a drug addict, come to India and meet a Swedish drug addict? Then move to Paris with him to live? Then to quarrel, to break up with him, and then to meet a French drug addict in a restaurant. So the father has done so much that the girl cannot get out of it. But you can. With practice, it allows to do everything. But you are not gods. I will not tell you that. Because some people support a theory that we human beings have come to some higher level. This theory says that we have come to some higher vibrations, higher than that of our planet. That is their theory. It's even hard to find an answer to such people. If we came to another dimension, we'd stop eating potatoes because it grows in soil. Yes, people tell such crazy things. And I'm tired answering, but it's really funny sometimes. So I'm always waiting for your questions. And maybe now about astrology you have some questions on this topic. The question from YouTube, why don't you ask time and place of birth making Blitz consultations? So when I make the Blitz consultations, that is not necessary, because we're influenced by the year and the months by 80%, and even less by the day and the hour of our birth. When I make the general horoscope, I consider absolutely all things. But if I need to answer just one question, which is not connected with children, and usually you ask about your life purpose, then time is not necessary, the time of your birth. And there's another question. So we perceive light and vibration. For example, I shot into you and died. There's no more me. But the bullet is flying to you. The same is the influence of the planets and stars and the influence of light. We perceive what flew billions of years ago, but we still catch it. It's like the solar wind. When it's born, we feel it like storms, but when it comes to us, everything is swept away. It's time, the topic of time. We should make a separate lecture about time. In ancient Egypt, there was a god Khonsu. It's a very interesting topic. I want to make a separate lecture on in vitro fertilization. I think it would be interesting because those techniques, they existed. So this god Khonsu, he was the god of time. He was never born. So all the rest of the gods were born, but this god Khonsu, his mother has frozen him as an embryo, so he stayed in between the worlds. The same is the story of Mahabharata. One of the queens had to give birth to 100 soldiers, and she was pregnant for a very long time, for 1.5 years, and she gave birth to a piece of meat. But one wise man took it and divided it into parts and placed in 100 vessels, filled them with some liquid, and in 9 months 100 boys were born. Well, one girl among them. But this is in vitro fertilization, and it existed thousands of years BC. So the topic of this god who existed in between the worlds is a very interesting topic on the matter of time. The time exists only in our heavens. There is no time phenomenon. So, can we say that the stars died there? Only things on which time acts can die. But the astronomers who are watching here the stars, they read these processes according to their brain. So they live within the framework of birth and dying. They cannot understand what's happening in reality. The same I bow to the people who spend time on excavations. Can you imagine? They have a lot of patience. They spend so much time on that. And Egyptologists who know a lot of things, but it never occurred to them that there were 2 sphinxes. This is logical. The deity of horizon are 2 lions who sit with their backs to each other. Isn't that logical? That a pyramid is between 2 sphinxes. This is the limitation of a far-fetched brain. Can you imagine if now to start teaching everyone meditation at school? By 17 years old, they will already have a level of 50% of the working brain. To give them tasks, correct tasks for development of their brains, according to the social caste, of course. And so these scientists will start to see what the present scientists with the limited consciousness don't see. I think we will come to that, because there used to be such things earlier. Another question. They say it's better for a person to live where he was born. And now we live in the world of globalization. We can move to China, to India. The girl asks, what is better, to live and to die in one place? Well, I had better not be born at all if to live and die in one place. Who told that? If we have a choice, where to die better? Of course, it's a joke. Well, there is an interesting thing about where to celebrate your birthday. Our New Year is our birthday. Each of us has his own calendar. I usually tell to the girls the lunar female calendar is a calendar of monthly periods. With the beginning of the periods, the lunar calendar begins. And our birthday is like an empty space. It's important for you to be protected on these days. Moreover, we can change the destiny of the year if we move to the appropriate place on the globe. For each of us, there is a certain day and place. I calculate certain points where it's better to be when you have an important event, like a wedding or the birth of the child. Once I sent a girl to give birth in USA because the situation was dangerous. So it's to the question of where to live and to die. To live and to die in one village is rather sad. Another question. If people lived on the Far East and they moved to Sochi, well, they did the right thing. The body is readjusting. There is such thing as acclimatization. Our body is affected by absolutely everything. You take off on a plane and the fluid in your joints starts moving completely different way. So everything changes in the body when we move. Our body is unique. They say all our ancestors were born in Africa. We arrived here and began to mutate. We mutate very well, I can say. I took the group to the highlands, and it's hard to overcome 2,500 meters for the first time. At 3,900 meters, there start the signs of mountain sickness. But on the second, third time, you don't react to it. You can go up at 4,000 and 5,000. You don't feel good. Last time in Tibet, everyone was feeling so bad, but I was fine because I've been at 5,900. Our body is readjusting. My friends from Asia write to me, "Oh, it's so hard, it's plus 45. I'm feeling fine, it's plus 45. Our body is really readjusting. Even if you move from the north to the south, a healthy body is readjusting very quickly. But acclimatization is a weakening of the immune system. But there is homeopathy for such things. There are some medical homeopathy. You can take care of your health and you can practice. You can live anywhere in the world. Just have trust. We live inside of God. There is nothing besides God here. This is the main phase, the main belief. Here everything happens with His consent. IVF, airplanes, even wars are with His consent. So if you have an opportunity to move to another place, just move. If there is no change of place in horoscope, they will not give you the visa. If there is a relocation there, everything will work out. And if there is practice and a teacher, you can change your horoscope by 30%. The question regarding the egregors. That doesn't depend from the egregors. So imagine here is the Earth. You live on the planet Earth, There's one layer, another layer, like an onion, the third layer. And the egregor of orthodoxy is formed by the energetics of people who believe in it. For example, you believe in Jesus. It has formed the egregor of the orthodoxy. The egregor of patriotism is formed in Ukraine. It will be formed soon. So this is an egregor. But those who practice, they go beyond the frames of the egregor. You can also think like that. They often tell me, but you are Ukrainian. And I say, I help this land. I sometimes take part in the politics. But I feel like I'm the person of the world. When I come to Egypt, genies don't let me go. I come to India, and Indian Brahmins don't let me go. They want me everywhere, in Altai, Siberia. I'm needed and belong to the whole world. Everywhere where the problems happen, I'm going there. I cannot belong to one place. This is my world. I ask you to think the same way. My students must think this way. You shouldn't limit yourself to something one. One of my students said that she will be telling in America about the symbols of Ukraine. And I told her, I can prove you these symbols originated from the ancient Egypt. And you can see it on the tombs and frescoes. And it's in Egypt where they first began to make clothes from flax. Linen clothes. Therefore, in multinational America, you cannot talk to people about things unfamiliar to them. Mexicans, Indians, Englishmen, Celtic people will listen to you. People from different cultures. But their light inside them, their DNA will not react to what you're saying, to what you'll be saying. You won't be popular. But if you find one symbol from each of these cultures and launch a video sequence with the Ukrainian text, their DNA will react. They will recognize it and will say, wow, that's great. Do you understand what I'm talking about? Looking at you, I can tell you who your ancestors were. You can analyze your DNA and check, and you will see how your ancestors were. Some are 70% from Africa, some are from Asia. It's obvious even judging from your hair. Judging by your legs, by your work, the way you walk. Therefore, how can you be confined to one egregor? And why to feed this one egregor when you can serve the whole world? The question about numerology. They say people born on the 4th, 13th and 22nd are the people of Rahu. No, that's not true. It's nonsense. I know there are many fake systems. I don't like to judge anyone. But if a person doesn't understand something, he prefers to make everything simple. That's how numerology appeared. It's not bad. You can use numerology for a start, to teach children at school, for example. Especially the girls like to calculate such things. But you shouldn't lock into this. If you're 50, you should go further. Jyotish is difficult. It's complicated. It has become perverted. They use such strange schemes. But of course, there are many good astrologers. I don't want to speak about everyone. But a person has kundli in his horoscope. It's like 4 pillars in Badzi. This is like a car given to you in your life. In all kinds of horoscopes, our principles are very similar. So there are time periods that change, and during these time periods, some planet comes for 7 years, another planet comes for 10 years, and there's a chance that you will enter the period of Rahu. Rahu and Ketu are the head and the tail of a dragon, which rotates around the polar star. This is figuratively. Everyone has them in their horoscope. And these are the knots of karma. You shouldn't do some things during these periods. Something may happen. The worst is when Rahu comes to the house of death. But we have different time periods. Maybe at 20 you get into this Rahu period. Or for 1.5 years or for 8 months, every 10 years we enter this Rahu period. It means that a person gets a little crazy. You should watch a TV series Shani Dev, an Indian TV series. They show this hero very interesting way. The actor is very tall and handsome, and when a person has this period of Rahu, he comes behind the person's back and whispers to his ear, "Rahu, go and kill this man." And so the person goes and does it. So the person gets a little crazy. But after this TV series, you understand your behavior. Like a girl who got divorced asked me, "Was it Rahu? Why did I get there?" We have here people who have Rahu periods. They practice, they meditate, they listen to the teacher not to make stupid mistakes. But it's not connected with the number. It's a complicated system. The calculation of the kundli is very difficult, by date and time of birth, and then there are time periods which are calculated. Every half a day is important. There's also a concept of pahar in Sanskrit. It's translated as a hill. The days are divided into 4 parts, and these parts are called pahars. The first pahar from midnight to dawn, the second till noon, the third till 6 p.m. and the fourth till midnight. I can calculate exactly the year, month, day and pahar. Once this way I saved a person from an assassination. I told him where to move and how to behave in order to get past this point. But there's not only the dangers of Rahu. Everyone is so afraid of Saturn. But he has a certain history, some story in every culture. They say it's like time, say different things about Saturn. But you still get what you deserve, says Saturn. It's like a look. It's like Siddhi. Saturn has Siddhi when he is looking. It's like master is looking at some person and that person cannot make bad things. If a Saturn is looking at you, you cannot do bad things. It will show, it will appear. But all your thoughts are like hieroglyph on your body. And you think no one can see or hear, but it's also manifested in your life events. Therefore, if a person lives well, graciously, observes Ekadashi, does no evil things to anyone, but rather does good things, Saturn may also help. By the way, it's Saturn who brings wealth. A question from a woman. The difference between her birth time and the time of birth of her brother is 50 minutes. Yes, it can influence a lot. Besides, you're a boy and a girl, so the horoscope schemes will be different. And you are also twins. Your Badzi maps are calculated in different ways. So the maps are different. The woman says, "My brother died last year and our destinies are very different." Yes, so that's what I mean. The horoscopes are very different and your characters are very different. These 50 minutes influence a lot, and the time periods are very different. Yes, you calculate it in different ways. It's not even the time, but whether you are a man or a woman. The horoscopes are imprinted in the heads of men and women in different ways. I even calculated horoscopes for cats and dogs. There are some specific peculiarities also. Another question here. What era are we now in? In Vedic tradition, they say now it's Kali Yuga, the time when there's a lot of sins and evil things around us. And the sacred writing says that at this era, at this time, an incarnation of Krishna will come and will destroy this evil world. We can see that now the times are really hard, very spoiled times. But you say that there should be some balance. Where is the balance of our time? I understand your question. But there are periods of the golden age, and there are periods when everything is destroyed. You've learned mathematics at school, so you know what is a sinusoid. The universe laws obey the law of cubic paraboloids. So it's a more drastic curve. Every 2000 years there are some periods, certain periods. Now we talk about zodiac cycles. When the sun enters the zodiac cycle, it's a sector. This is a sector. 2000 years there was the period of the Aries. 2000 years there was the period of Taurus. And now, approximately now, we have entered the period of Aquarius. Every 2000 years we get into a certain sector. And just imagine a mathematical graph. Every 2000 years we get into a kind of zone which tells us about the trends, the current trends. This is a trend for the golden age, which is the rise of the culture. And there's a trend for the dark times. 2000 years of dark times, they existed, and it was an unpleasant time. On the other hand, then the paraboloid rises to the highest point in the development of civilization, and the end of the world begins. As after each breath, there goes an exhalation. Everything is destroyed, and a new round of paraboloid starts. And that's normal. That's why who said that the previous civilization looked like this? Most likely otherwise. And before that, there was another civilization. But every time, when there were left only several creatures from the previous civilization, the next one killed them, parasitizing on some foundation principles. I know these ancient texts, but the thing is, no one can calculate the exact time. Now I'll try to explain you. How did the ancients navigate in time? Do we still have time for the lecture? We still have 10 minutes left. So how did the ancients navigate in time? Now you have all identical time segments. And in Egypt, they thought different way. There were water clocks everywhere. The daytime part was measured with a sundial. The nighttime was measured with water dial. In China, approximately the same, but the water clock in China measured the same segments. And in Egypt, in this water bowl, some segments were short, the others were longer. Why? Because in winter, the night is longer, and in summer it's shorter. If it's divided by 12, the summer segments are short, and winter segments are longer. But the time is a relative concept. We can see it in the pyramids in Guatemala and other ancient buildings. We can say for sure that earlier the year used to be 360 days. And what was the Vedic year when rishis wrote these texts? We don't know that. Therefore, we don't know exactly when this yuga comes. But when Krishna comes, everyone will feel it. Moreover, I can tell you more than that, more than they write in the Vedic texts. Before Krishna comes, Lakshmi will come. And when Lakshmi comes, She will look at the spoiled world and will introduce new laws. And everyone will listen and will hear her. And this will be a completely different system, spiritual system. But since Krishna and Lakshmi are one and the same, who will come? Krishna. And everyone will recognize him. So don't worry. And the last question for today. Because we've moved from the topic of astrology now. The question about the compatibility of partners. If you met a partner who has an unfavorable horoscope for you, who turns on punishment for you by his horoscope, can you live together with this man? Well, actually, they often ask me this question. Sometimes two horoscopes may switch on the punishment for each other. They can live together, but the question is, what will it be? In India, when a child is born, they have a book with horoscopes. And when time to get married comes, they don't even wait for love, but they look for the right partner in their caste. They look if the person is decent, if they like each other, and they go to the Brahmin and look at their horoscopes. And if horoscopes say that these people can live together and will have a good life, they make a wedding, the right wedding. They don't do 7 circles now, only 3, but still it's a very beautiful ritual. And people live together, they adjust to each other, and they live very, very well. And if we met our punishment, we can say, well, this is my punishment, because the reptiloid brain wants this, only this man or only this woman. And then, when the hormonal decline occurs at the age of 36, you think, well, it was Rahu. What did I do there? I could change something. But if the Lord has given you the opportunity and opened your eyes, can't you really control your feelings? Unfaithfulness occurs when a person abandons his humanity and goes by his animal instincts. Can't we really control our emotions? We are intelligent human beings. This is how we choose our way. The horoscope can be changed if we control our emotions and our character. Well, that's all for today. I believe we'll have to make a new lecture about astronomy and astrology number 2. Goodbye.